Welcome to the AthenaX Livestream. I'm your host, Neil, and today we've got a very special guest. We have a seasoned founder, and he's building in the hot space of AI for LAM. We've got Sina Yamani. Sina, welcome to the live stream.
Thanks, Neil. Pleasure to be with you.
So, Sina, I think you're one of our most accomplished guests so far. You've exited previously a fintech company for payments, and now you're moving on to your next big thing, which is action model. Essentially, for our audience, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what is action model?
Yeah, I guess I'll start a quick intro into myself. Engineering background, been programming the old school way since I was about 10, and had a number of different ventures. My last one was a fintech in the UK called Yoello. We were trying to circumvent Visa and MasterCard. So we had a banking payments license, which let us connect to the banks directly and basically move funds. And we scaled that very quickly. Within a year, we had millions of users. And we learned a lot through that process around the power of the community. You know, people really rallied behind us and our vision because they wanted to fight back against the payment giants, right? Visa and MasterCard that charge businesses a huge amount of money. And that all of that applies even more so now to AI. You know, AI is almost an existential threat to us as a people, as a humanity, and we're seeing it every single day. We're slowly being replaced, and all of that value transfer is going to a handful of trillion-dollar companies and a few billionaires. We think that it should be the people that have a chance to own this. And that's what the action model is all about. We come together as a community, and we build the ecosystem together, and we all own it together as well.
Nice. So essentially, it's kind of like a decentralized action model training platform per se. Did I get that one right?
There's a lot of different aspects to the action model. You know, we do have a browser extension, which you can download within 60 seconds. It runs in the background. And from that, you are helping to train the action model itself on a specific type of data that other AI companies don't actually have. And because it's user journey data. And this is what the next stage of AI is. You know, we've been with LLMs, chatbots. The next few years is about automation. And the data that AI companies use to train their LLMs is mainly text. And that's why the hallucination rates are so high. That's why accuracy is so low when it comes to automation. Whereas with the browser extension, we collect exactly the kind of data needed for automation, which is what did the user do on a specific website. That's only one part of the action model. We have a lot of different components that basically users can contribute to, and through their contributions, they earn a fractional stake in the ecosystem, and that fractional stake represents your participation, your ownership of the AI future.
Nice. I really like where you're going with this. I'm starting to see a pattern here. First, you're circumventing Visa and MasterCard, and now you're circumventing big tech. So it's a little bit of a rebel, a bit of a rebellious kind of view of life. But at the same time, I think the disruptors are essentially the creators of change in today's economy. So let's talk about the state of AI today, right? When we hear about AI agent innovation, we hear about automation, we hear about agents taking over jobs. But at the same time, when we look at the companies or the hobbyists who are building AI agents and assign wallets to them to pay for whatever on chain, some of these agents have lost some money in crypto, but at the same time, they're also making mistakes in the execution. But we've also seen some AI agents where, when it comes down to trading, it's excellent as well. So I think one of like the dying questions here is to understand where are we in terms of AI? Because AI is supposed to be this thing that replaces the human element. So where are we in terms of that today?
Well, like I said, the last few years have been about chatbots, and you speak to the AI, hey, I need help with writing a blog post or creating an image, and then the AI will kind of speak back to you, generate some content for you. So that's been the where we've gotten to date, and that's where the population as a majority has had an experience with AI. The next stage is about automation, and that's where the AI actually does the work for you. It learns how you do a specific job, whatever your role is, what your tasks and responsibilities are, and it can automate that for you. And this next stage is going to be devastating in some ways for a lot of people. We're talking about 1 billion people around the world are employed to work behind the computer screen, and almost all of that will be completely automated within the next 3 years. Right? That's our prediction with the state and the speed that this is going to happen. The technology already is absolutely incredible, and we know how fast this place is going as well. And so when it comes to an employer who's running a business, they only care about a few things: making more money, being more efficient, right? And when these tools land in front of them and it says we can automate all of this work, it will run 24/7 in the cloud, and it will cost 10% of whatever you're spending right now on people, then it's a no-brainer for the business. That's the unfortunate truth. And so it's a wave that's coming. It's inevitable without a rapid government intervention, which I just don't think is going to happen. Regulations always come after a crisis has happened, and so from that perspective, I think a lot of people either are not aware of what's coming, or they've got their heads in the sand. What Action Model is about is enabling people to actually participate within this by recognizing that this is a wave that cannot be stopped, and they might as well join and surf that wave as well in whatever way possible. So that's the whole ethos behind what we're doing and what the Action Model is all about.
Nice, nice. I really like that you said, a lot of jobs are going to be automated. If there's a one job which I hope will never be automated, is the guy who creates the memes, because I need those in my daily life, right? Every morning I do a little bit of doom scrolling. But let's go back to some training data, right? In our last conversation, we talked about the differences between languages and actions, and essentially this left me with the question: why is action training data so difficult to come by? Because previously in Web 2, we've had digital marketing attribution models where you could put in a plugin that could track a heat map via an e-commerce website, and essentially that would be readily available to the wider audience. But you mentioned that the training data in itself is very difficult to come by. So I would love to hear your thoughts on why you think this is the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about, first of all, what is an LLM and what it's built on, right? And the data itself is mainly text, okay? And that text, these big AI companies, they've sourced mainly through scraping the internet, right? So what does that mean? They go and they have these bots and they crawl the internet and they just take all of the language that humanity's produced, whether it's articles, blog posts, social media, whether it's scientific journals, any source they can get their hands on, they would download that text and then they compress that into these language models. Now, that text is just information about things. And whilst that text might contain, the documentation of a platform or the FAQs of, oh, this is how you use HubSpot, that's just documentation, which is text, right? And explains how to do something. That's why the chatbot is so good at explaining how to do something. If you say, hey, I need to go and do this, it will say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go and do this, right? Whereas if you wanted to actually do something, it's a completely different set of data that's required to train that AI. And that data you cannot scrape, right? So the way that a browser extension works is it basically learns from how you use a specific website. So it will learn that you clicked on these buttons in this sequence of events. It will learn what does those buttons look like? What are the rough mouse coordinates that they exist in? What are the DOM elements? All of these different things that are required by the AI to actually be able to repeat those tasks. And when you have a few thousand people using the browser extension on a given website, then what you end up doing is mapping all of the functionality of that website. You understand every single possible user journey on that website and exactly how to complete whatever those tasks were. That information is then used by the AI to be able to accurately go and complete those tasks. If you want, we're all aware of hallucination within AI, right? And in text, it's pretty hard to see. You have to, normally when we're speaking to an AI, it's around a topic that we don't have much information about. So we just take it for granted. And whatever it says back to us, we take it as gospel. So you don't necessarily query it. Whereas in actions, first of all, because the data quality is not correct, then the hallucination rates for actions are actually much higher than they are for text-based responses. Secondly, it's immediately obvious that the AI has made a mistake because you go and tell it to log in, get stuck on the cookie page, right? And so, from an enterprise perspective, if you're a business and you want to trust an AI to go and do work for you, complete tasks for you, there can't be hallucinations. If there's anything important you need to do, it has to operate perfectly, and therefore you need to have like a 99% success rate for a business to be able to trust these kind of models. And that's where you need the exact journeys and all the possibilities for a specific platform to be trained by the AI that you're using.
Amazing, amazing. And I think you highlighted a really important point as well on why it's important to essentially own your own data here. And I believe recently when it comes, you've just launched your action model platform. I think about maybe 10 days ago.
That's right, yeah, and it went a lot better than we anticipated, considering we haven't done any marketing.
Nice. Yeah. So I was doing I was checking it out earlier, and I think you guys are essentially in the middle of a execution masterclass. You've essentially launched a product that has reached over 100,000 users already in less than 2 weeks on your Discord. And I think this is something that's terrific. It's definitely not easy to accomplish, especially in the Web3 and Web2 space. So I do want to ask some questions here about this product launch because that's kind of fresh, right? Why do you think this is the case that you've reached such a astronomical growth, right? And what were the steps that you took in preparation for you to reach there?
Well, first of all, I think that our ethos is good. What we're trying to achieve as a project, as a community, is for the good of the people, and that fundamentally is the number one reason why people want to join. Secondly, the other thing is that the platform is invite only. You have to get into the platform via an invite from someone else. So I think we're now at about 180,000 users. So it's grown quite quickly, and all of those came from someone. And as a result of that, because of that, it's the community bringing on board their friends, right? They're bringing on board their colleagues, their people within their own circles, and that is probably the fastest and the best way for any product or project to grow. Really get your users on board with whatever you're doing, and motivate them to bring on board a few of their friends. If you can achieve that, then you get exponential scale. And that really is what our goal with the action model is. We managed to get to millions of users in the FinTech, Yoelo, and that was completely Web 2. Right? There wasn't a single aspect of Web 3 in that company. And here, I think that we can get to tens of millions of people, because over the next year, AI is going to get absolutely crazy. We saw how quickly LLMs grew and the whole chatbot era kind of took over the world. Now it's time for automations, right? And so people are going to see more and more these incredible tools that are creeping in on what they're doing for a living, and they're going to get A, more scared, and B, more hatred, right, for what these big tech companies are essentially doing. And as a result of that, what Ethos, the mission that Action Model has, which is that it's the people, right? It's the people that own this together. It's just going to grow from that perspective, and people will be bringing on board more of their friends. So that's fundamentally what I think is the reason why we grew so quickly within a couple of weeks, and how I think we'll get to the masses globally.
Interesting. So I think partly one of the reasons the LLMs were so popular was because of how simple it was to use, right? You could just go onto a website, you could type a question, and it spits out the answer pretty quickly. And you're saying it's going to be a similar sort of pattern when it comes to action models, but let's kind of be let's be a little bit honest here, right? Like regular people, they find automating their workflows difficult, right? They love to use things that just work outside of the box. They don't want to read the docs for like 20 minutes to understand how things work. How do you plan to essentially overcome that barrier for your users, given you have now 180,000 people on board?
That is a very good question, and it's actually the cusp of the automation issue, right? LLMs, anyone can use them. You can speak to it in any language. Whereas automation is a lot more hand-holding involved. There's a lot more of an onboarding process required. What's being built now and what's coming is not these single workflows like NA10 and Zapier that can do a very specific thing. It's AI employees, right? It's a single AI-based role that has its own calendar, has its own access to your platforms, to the system, and it can operate 24/7. Now, the problem with that is the onboarding, right? When you hire a staff member, you have to train them what to do in their job. This takes 1-2 months at the very least, right? You have to teach them how to do their job, what platforms to use, policies, procedures, and that takes a very long time. With AI, it has a similar level of work, basically, to onboard one of these AI employees. That's the biggest challenge that startups have to overcome to basically bring on board businesses. And we have a very novel solution to this. You'll be able to test it out in about a month. So I'll keep you on your toes for that, but it's very easy. If you look at things that are coming out right now, look at OpenClaw and how much how quickly that's grown in a matter of a month. That's very technical, right? It might be easy to set up, but it's very, very technical to use. It breaks all the time. It's unbounded. There's been 100,000 hacks for it already. What we're building is an enterprise version of that. It's something that businesses with no technical capability whatsoever can easily, first of all, onboard, scale, and maintain.
Interesting. I think it's definitely exciting what you're doing right now. I'm interested now in thinking, because AI is such a frontier space, and you're coming into the space as a second-time founder. what essentially would you place as the importance for sorry what would you place as the important pillars or variables here to measure this sort of PMF that you've got a product that your community wants and they're growing and it's you're developing something good for everybody. What is sort of like the things here that you look at?
Well, I mean, Action Model is a community-led project. It's built by the people, and from that perspective, we have a very tight feedback loop within our ecosystem. Our community members are very, very active, and both on within our Discord, but also the applications and the products. And we receive hundreds of submissions on a daily basis for new ideas, bug reports, submissions for roadmap, what should we do next, things we should tinker with, and these are the things that if you have a very tight loop, then you can really rapidly improve your product and find out exactly what people are doing. Secondly, is just basic analytics. If you track all of the different components of your products, then you can identify exactly what people are using and what people what people find beneficial to them. So it's rapid development cycles. Those are the most important things.
Right. So it's the iteration process where you really just keep on learning, and the more that you iterate, the faster your feedback and your growth becomes, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. And I think that's a tried and tested model that applies for most tech startups these days. And I'm really excited to know that you're so focused on the community, right? Everyone's talking about, you're talking about come on board, build some stuff with us. We will iterate the product together. And then essentially, if it works out, if it's in demand, you'll be able to earn data you'll be able to earn rewards for people using your models in perpetuity, right? Which is very similar to kind of like the ethos of NFTs once upon a time with your royalties, right? So I am thinking here, because action model here, right? It promises to be community owned, but at the same time, let's be real, we live in a world of startups, companies get acquired, and companies get acquired for their IPs. How does action model intend to protect their users when it comes down to the IP ownership of the action model?
So, as you rightfully said with regards to the ownership structure, first I'll break down how it actually works. We've quantified the different areas that you can contribute towards the action model. And there's 6 or 7 different ways. It starts off as simple as download the browser extension, right? And you can use that in a number of different ways. You can run it in the background. We have ActionFi, which is very targeted to specific platforms we want you to train on, specific tasks we want you to complete. Throughout the different contribution methods, we've quantified exactly what the rewards are, and then the rewards are basically pro rata. Whatever you earn as an individual, the distribution of that is pro rata against the rest of the community, and therefore your earnings will be as well. If you've contributed, let's say 10% of the rest of the community, then you will receive roughly 10% of the growth as well. What that does is obviously it's supposed to be a way of incentivizing a community and providing fair distribution. But secondly, the result of it is you end up with a channel in which your product grows. If we have millions of users within our community who are rewarded based on the actual growth of the ecosystem, then they become the most powerful affiliate channel possible with nothing to compete against. If you think about everyone who almost everyone falls into one of two categories. You either work for a company or you run a company, right? And almost all of these people, they have a level of influence within that company to decide what products they use, what software they use. They can recommend it at the very least. And as this next wave of AI is coming, the automation stage is coming, then these millions of people that are going to be inside our community, they're not talking about OpenAI's version of this or Claude's version of this. They're talking about the action model because they have a stake in it, along with millions of other people. And so that becomes your distribution. Secondly, the whole model itself is designed on a foundation approach, and that will evolve into a DAO structure. The actual community itself will be able to vote on important matters. So and that obviously is the whole decentralized approach. That's where we think that AI and Web3 has the best crossover. Fundamentally, there's a lot of projects that are trying to do AI Web3. A lot of it is vaporware, mainly wrappers, and whether it's the compute side of it or the problem is that this space needs to be fast and efficient, right? AI in particular, whether from the inference perspective and the compute perspective, it needs to be very, very fast. And so there's not that much you can actually do from to completely decentralize something. And the most important thing that we think, if you want to rapidly build something that people actually want to use, that's affordable as well, in comparison to a completely centralized Web 2 product, you need to focus on the community aspect and the transparency. Those are the areas that we're focusing on primarily. At the beginning, we have plans to decentralize other parts of it as well going forward. And a lot of that will be dictated by the community as well.
Super, super, very interesting strategy, and also a very simple one. Be the first, be the first in the market. Go in hard, go in quick, and dictate the flow is what I'm hearing. And I think that's sort of that's sort of a, well, I wouldn't say ambitious, but like at the same time I would say it's a very full on execution first kind of like strategy. And it's something which I believe that crypto lacks at the moment with most projects, because you rightly pointed out it's mostly vaporware, what everyone is doing out there, and having that execution to bring essentially the vision forward is really interesting. Let's talk about Ethereum, right? The Ethereum community here, because Ethereum here has loads of developers, and you've got a platform to bring developers on board to essentially fill in the gaps for you to automate some workflows. What are some of like the things that you look at when designing some sort of iteration model to onboard crypto communities and develop workflows on the action model?
So, this is the other thing about Web3 AI projects. I would say 90% of them, let's just forget about whether it's vaporware or wrappers or not, they're all focusing on crypto-related products. And there's not many that you can choose from. It's mainly trading, right? And that's a very, very small market, unfortunately. Like when you actually think about Web3, it's tiny. It's probably 0.5% of what Web 2 actually is. If you take out Bitcoin, Ethereum, the market caps of these, then in comparison to the real world, there's almost nothing there. From the user base perspective, from the revenue perspective, it's incomparable. We're not focusing on building products tailored for Web3, right? Our focus is the action model is for the whole world. These billion people that we're talking about, they're going to lose their jobs as a result of AI automation. They're not in Web3. These are real people in the real world working for real businesses. And that's what our focus is. Do we have the flexibility within our products for the community to build Web3 agents? Yes, and they already have. We have an API portal, we have an MCP portal. People have already wired it up to a variety of different Web3 products, whether it's analytics, whether it's trading, whether it's DEXs. And so that will come from the community perspective. And that is one of the other ways you can contribute to the ecosystem. You can actually build agents, you can build workflows, you can build tools within the action model that make it very easy for businesses to onboard, right? And so we've made that in a flexible way so that the people can make tools for anything and connect them to anything as well.
Interesting. I think this is sort of like a casting a very wide net approach then when it comes to the action model then in regards to Web3.
Well, like I said, we have a very tight focus on what our goals are as a company and as a project, and that is the overall automation of computer-based work. Whether it's replying to emails, whether it's doing your CRM management, whether it's HR functions, whatever it is, and we have hundreds of use cases and demos on the websites that people can go and check out. It's very flexible as a tool, and the majority of that is in Web 2. There are incredible things about Web 3 that we're leveraging. One is the distribution of resources, the transparency of who does what and who owns what. These are the most important things. And that's why we brought this into Web3. We wanted to create a structure in which the people own the AI, and there's not many transparent ways to do this other than coming from Web3 perspective.
I understand. What do you think is going to happen for AI in 2026? And this is sort of like a blue skies kind of like a question here. Like imagine you were the person with the crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen this year?
This is the year that automation kicks off, right? This is the year that businesses start to learn about, oh wow, I can automate all of this stuff that I'm doing, and I can actually speed up whatever my workflows are, my business streams by probably 10x. It took me an hour to do this every single day. Now it runs in the background 24/7. So from that perspective, this is what's coming in. I would say that about 95% of businesses haven't even touched automation yet, because the tools that have been available, they have been very technical. There's no shortage of videos and tutorials on NA10 and Zapier and these kind of tools. But the problem with that is they're extremely technical. They have a high learning curve, and anything that you see that are kind of templates are very brittle. They only work for an exact specific workflow, and they're not flexible for what a company needs. And the transition that's coming now is from RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation, which is like a fixed, brittle workflow, if this, then that, to AI can actually manage the process, have its own knowledge base, its own context of what not only the business is, but what it's doing right now. And it can make decisions on the fly. There's a really good example of even error correction that we have in one of our use cases. One of the HR tools that we have was basically reviewing CVs and then booking appointments with those CVs. And it went to use Google Calendar to basically select an interview slot, and it clicked the wrong coordinate. Our AI moves the mouse and the keyboard, right? So it moved the mouse, clicked, dragged to create the appointment, and then when it looked at the screen after it finished that, it realized that it slightly missed the timing of in the calendar event itself, and then it went and fixed that. That's not part of the workflow. That was never what was designed for the AI to actually do, but it figures it out on the fly. And that is what, it's a very simple example, but it goes to show what's coming next, right? It's not a fixed, brittle workflow that needs to be designed for a specific business and whatever they're doing, But now it's AI that is flexible and anyone can just plug in and play because it can make decisions, right? It doesn't need to understand exactly, and you don't need to have developers or techies designing these workflows for you. It's just plug and play, and then the AI can figure everything out on its own.
Super. Where do you think these AI would be implemented as like the first step for all businesses in the future?
What do you mean by that?
So, let's say that I'm a mom and pop shop. And I'm doing some retail business. And, my grandson comes to me and says that, hey, you should go ahead and automate your business. What is like the easiest way, or what do you think would be the easiest way for them to start with AI?
So the first of all, they need our onboarding tool, right? That's the biggest bottleneck. And like I said, you'll be able to play around with that next month. The second thing is they need to understand what is capable. Even when ChatGPT first came out and LLMs, me personally, I had no idea what it's capable of, in terms of the full breadth of what training data they had and what it could do. I knew that it could do some basic things, but look at it today. And automation is exactly the same thing. People need to be educated on how things will be able to work and what are the capabilities of these AI employees, essentially, and most importantly, how to onboard them. That's the most important thing that any startup focusing on this area needs to be focusing on.
Nice. Interesting. Sina, we are approaching the end of our live stream. So, as we approach the final segment, I would pose you with two more questions. The first question would be, if you could let the audience walk away with one thing today, what would it be?
The main thing is don't bury your head in the sand. If you're employed, if someone pays you to sit behind a computer screen, you won't have this job in a few years from now, right? I promise you. And so be careful of that, right? And find a way to either protect yourself by doing something that can't easily be automated. Just imagine that AI will be able to do everything on the computer, right? So protect yourself from that perspective, and most importantly, try and get involved in some way, whether that's actually creating the technology itself, whether it's tools, whether it's workflows, some kind of additional revenue stream, or as simply as joining the action model and contributing to our ecosystem.
Nice. Be prepared, I would say, is the message here. What is the best way that people can find out about Action Model and also get involved with you?
There's a lot of different ways, and it depends on what you want to do. If you don't have much time to actually invest, follow us on X, Action Model AI. If you want to be a builder, if you want to create inside of the Action Model ecosystem, join the Discord. Overarching everything, go to the website, actionmodel.com. It has all the information there. We have really in-depth documentation. Create an account. You need to find an invite link, of course, and then get involved.
Amazing. And for the audience here today, if you are looking for an invite or just to take a look at what Action Model is all about, head on over to the AthenaX Discord, where we're running a campaign at the moment to essentially share with you our link for the Action Model. So do take a look and have an experience. Go and try it out. Sina, it's been amazing to have you on. It was a really interesting conversation about automation and AI, and thank you for joining the show.
Neil, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me on.
All right, and thank you everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode of the AthenaX Livestream. Bye bye.